Hi everyone, you are here today to learn how you can query your AWS cost and usage report. We want to show you the power of this report and show you ways in which you can enable it today. Just a caveat, this is actually a reInvent talk from 2023, but we felt like it'd be really useful to a lot of people, so we decided to record it and put it on the YouTube channel. The cost and use report can be millions of lines long and hundreds of columns wide for every little detail of your cloud cost and usage. We know from experience that this can be a daunting set of data, but don't worry. We're going to show you how to get insights into this data and definitely set up and show you how to set it up properly. Just to introduce myself, my name is Steph Gooch. I'm a senior optimization architect at AWS. Alex.
And my name is Alex Head, and I run the optics team at AWS.
Awesome. So what are we actually going to cover in this session? Well, we're going to show you exactly what this report is and how to enable it for success. We're going to look at who typically uses this report. And then this is actually a code talk, a reInvent. It was a new style that was created at previously in 2023. And what we're doing is we're going to be live querying and show you the kind of how you would create a query and important aspects of creating one so that you can follow along at home. We also then know you want to keep up to date and learn more about this amazing data set. So we're going to be sharing with you some resources that you can use after this session. But before we start, we have to clarify something, don't we, Alex?
Yes. So we will be talking today about the AWS cost and usage report. But to shorten it and prevent us from fumbling way too much over our words, we are going to be saying CUR. So cost and usage equals CUR. Steph, what does cost and usage equal?
CUR.
Great. I just don't want anyone getting confused when we continue to ramble on today. Now, Steph, can you explain a little bit about the configuration and the setup of the CUR before we jump in?
Definitely. So when configuring your CUR, there's a couple of different options, and we wanted to specify the best ones that you could do. So firstly, we have the creation. Now it can be created in an AWS payer and look across your entire organization and all your linked accounts, or it could be done in one singular linked account and just focus on that, and that's called a member CUR. For today, we're going to be demoing an example of an entire payer, and in general, we really recommend that you do this for your organization. There are also different options for granularity. There's hourly, daily, monthly. We highly recommend actually going for the most granular, which is going to be the hourly, because you can always roll up this data into your monthly review. There is also an option to add resource ID. Do this, set up your resource ID. Very specific. We really want to make sure you get as most information as possible. For example, if you had a service that was driving most of your spend, wouldn't you like to know what resource was the biggest cause? There are also some different options when it comes to formatting. We recommend using Parquet because you can use Athena to then query it, which is what we'll do today. But Alex, why is it a good idea not to use something like CSV?
It's a good idea because you don't want to make the mistake I did the first time I used the CUR. I printed it out and it was hundreds of pages, and I laid it all out on my floor to try and understand all the different data that I was seeing. And it was not fun and also not productive. So that is why I agree with Steph's path to use Athena with the CUR.
Awesome. And finally, this is not a configuration option, but I did want to highlight this. Your data will land in an S3 bucket that you choose and create at the start of the process. This happens every 24 hours, approximately. This is as often as it will and can come into your bucket. So there's no kind of real-time option for this, but this is as close to real-time as you're going to get. Just wanted to establish that before we get any comments or questions. So now we have the configuration points covered. Alex is going to explain the architecture so you can understand the kind of processes that get your cost and use report into the bucket.
Yes. So Steph kind of alluded to this, but you have to opt into the CUR. And as she just said, it takes 24 hours to show up. You can request a backfill for your last year's spend, but you'd have to request that on top of it. Other than that, it's going to start showing up once you opt in. Now, you might already have this set up in your AWS account, but let's just walk through it real quick so that if you don't, you know how it works. And if you do, you get a good reminder. So you will get your CloudFormation template from your S3 bucket. Once you deploy that CloudFormation template, it will create a glue crawler and Lambda functions. Those Lambda functions will trigger the glue crawler to run when the CUR data has been updated, to look for partitions in year and month and and updates so that you don't have to refresh the data. Then it will appear in a database and is ready to be used in Athena. Now, once it's in Athena, what does this data look like and what even is the format? And that brings us to the wonderful data schema. So on this, we're going to go straight to AWS website because this is something that you should bookmark, save. I reference it all the time. We'll put the link in the show notes too, so you can have that. But this is going to be your data dictionary. So Steph, can you go ahead and go to identity details? Okay, so every CUR has identity details, billing details, and line item details. Those are the three categories that are always going to be in your schema. The rest will show up whether you are using a product or have usage that corresponds with them, or has, as you can see, savings plans or reservations, and so forth. So let's go to line item. This is where a lot of the juice is. And as we're scrolling, you can see we get a lot of questions about this one right here. This is called blended cost. And no, it has nothing to do with a mixed beverage. It is your cost average out on your usage throughout the month. So if you used S3 throughout the month, it's going to give you the average cost of your S3 usage when for each line item across that month. Now, if you scroll down a little bit further, and this is where it gets a tad confusing, you have unblended cost. And unblended is what it cost right when you used it. So maybe you're going to get like a tiered discount by the amount of usage that you have. So like the more S3 you use, the better rate that you get. It's going to show you the cost or rate right when you used it. So whatever tier that you were at. Now, Steph, what do you use when you query?
So I'll often use unblended cost, and then sometimes I'll even make my own amortized cost, which is something that we'll go into later in the session.
Awesome. So now you know the data, you know how it's getting into Athena, and you know how to opt in the right way and all the right configurations. So let's go to how this applies to your day-to-day world and your job and your organization. Now, as the leader of optics, it's been always a priority of mine to grow and evolve our model to mirror what we think customers should do. And in that, we've evolved our roles on the team to match the different phases and areas of optimization. And those are inform, optimize, and operate.
And there's so many different personas, I think, that access these different ones. And there are three key ones that we relate to the FinOps Foundation using as well. So the first one we have is business. So this is often management level, the people who care about the bigger picture when it comes to your cloud footprint. You then also have finance, who care about who to charge, what to charge them, how to make sure this data is accurate. So a very different outlook on the entire kind of cloud footprint. Finally, you have engineering, who care about their individual resources in their accounts, a very specific view of what they're spending. And they often want to get things like recommendations from this data. So now we understand what the CUR is, how to configure it, what the data will look like, and who's actually going to use it. Let's do some querying. So as I mentioned at the start, this is a code talk, which means it's live querying. So we're actually going to create some queries for those different personas. But just as a warning, I'm very dyslexic and there will be spelling errors. I almost guarantee it. But just forgive me, and we'll make sure that all the queries that we have will be shareable and you can try them at home.
And hey, Steph, since we're doing this on YouTube, if you catch a mistake that we do not catch during this recording, drop a comment and maybe you could get a sticker as a reward.
Yeah, love that. Okay, so now we're going to swap over to our first querying section. So we're going to have this persona, it's finance, and this person in finance wants to make sure that they can distribute shared spend so they can actually charge back in their business. And the way they're going to do this is we're going to use tags. So in this situation, we have enabled cost allocation tags, which are tags that can be added to your cost and use report CUR. regularly. So whenever your resource has got that tag will add an additional column, and I'll show you how to see that now. But that is going to be our first querying section. So I pulled up my Athena in my account, and I'm just going to give you a bit of a scene setting of what I can see at the moment. So this is Athena. It uses Presto in the back end, but it's just a SQL database. And you can see on my left-hand side, I have my tables and I have the cost and use report here, or the CUR. And I'm going to be using this CUR view. So if you are interested to see all those columns that I mentioned, if you click on the little plus minus next to yours, then I can see all of the different columns that we have. So when I mentioned again the tags, I'm just going to show you there. There's our tags at the bottom. So if you do want to get started just easy querying, by selecting over here, you can do preview, and that will select stars, select everything from the CUR, and limit 10. So it only brings back 10 resources. And as you can see, we've got tons of information. We've got different times, invoicing. We've actually anonymized the data. So when it comes to things like account ID, we'll be using these instead. And also we've anonymized some of the resource IDs as well. But as you can see, I'm just going to do this very dramatically. There's so much information here. Some could say too much. I do not. I love all the data.
Way too much to print out.
Way too much to print out. Definitely. Okay, so going back to our concepts, we have this finance person. They want to do chargeback for their business. So how do they even start? So what we're going to do is really simplify a query and then kind of build it up. So because I've
also to jump in, Steph, like if you have a finance brain, which I probably lean a little bit more finance, Steph definitely leans a little bit more engineer. This is a good way for me to just understand the data a little bit. Like if you're used to Excel and querying is new to you, do this view first, because this will just like help you understand how that schema really works and is laid out.
Yeah, really dive into it and see all the information. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab just really basic stuff. So I'm going to use I'm not going to use account ID. I'm going to use resource tag. So we said we're going to do this cost distribution by tag. If you want to add something from the table, if you just double click it, it propagates in here. So just as a flag, you can do that. So we're going to get distributed spend, and we're going to also add, because we want to see what time frame we're looking in. Let's add month and year. And we're going to sum all of our blended costs, which is what Alex was talking about earlier, from this database. And just so we tidy it up a little bit, we're going to group everything together. So it's not an individual line for every single line entry. So to do this, we're going to group. And again, to make our lives easier, rather than referencing every single thing to group by, I'm just going to use numbers. So you can just simplify it by doing 1, 2, 3, which would be resource tag, month, year. And then sum, you don't need to group by. Okay, first query. Are there going to be any errors? Oh, there's going to be an error. Group. I've already done it. There we go.
Is that an on-purpose error? Or no, it wasn't.
No, that wasn't on purpose error. Spoiler for later, there is one on purpose error. Okay. I'm also going to add let's call this sum unblended costs, just to keep the name similar. Okay. So when we do this in person, I'll be asking the audience these questions, but Alex is my audience today. Or maybe comment down below if you have anything. So Alex, I've summed by all my spend. Is that it? Have I distributed cost across all my accounts, do we think? Or do you think there's more things I have to do to make this a bit more fair on accounts?
I would say there's probably some more that you need to do to make it fair on accounts. Although, what an easy way to distribute costs. I should just start doing that across the team now.
Okay, so many things wrong with this now. So now we can see this information. We can see all the different tags that we're going to distribute by. We can see we've got too many months in here. We just need to do 1 month. We have all these blank boxes. Alex, what do those signify?
It signifies no tags, correct?
Yes.
And Steph, I'm not sure if we touched on it, but tags do they automatically show up in the CUR?
No, you have to enable them. So in your billing console, there's an option to do cost allocation tags on the left-hand side of the portal. And all you do is go in there and it will list every single tag you've ever tagged on your resources. And if you enable them by ticking the box and pushing enable, they will start to be added to your cost and usage report.
And if you're a finance person and you're watching this, not to harp on the whole printing out story, but the reason that I did that and what we're looking at here with allocating these costs is because I was originally in procurement where I would get a bill and I would code it to a certain department. This really allows you to get so in the weeds and really see that detail. And not only is that good for kind of holding different teams accountable or charging correctly, but that also goes into some of the next personas that we'll look at, right? Of how do I see if this product is making money? How do I tie it into revenue? So think when you're looking at the tags, think in a way of we have environment on here, but you could also do, this is team A, team B. This is our sandbox environment. So this is a testing ground. Maybe we build that differently. This is a product for a certain customer. Now we know how to build that correctly.
Yeah. So there's lots of different options. Like you said, depends on just think about your own business, I would say. Okay. So like Alex said, this blank box means no tags. So if you're a business and you're thinking, I need to charge back all of my cloud spend, then you're like, what am I going to do with this like 57K? I think that is 473K. Like, what do I do with that untagged amount? And this is where we do the distribution. So we see a lot of people do this where you can distribute unallocated spend proportionally based on the usage in general. So what I'm talking about here is environment 47 owns this much of the bill, second highest amount, so a high percentage. We want to work out if it owns 40% of the Amazon bill, it should then pay 40% of this unallocated spend. This kind of things works as well with unutilized savings plans, RIs and stuff like that. But this is we're going to go through some different elements of writing a query that are a little bit more sophisticated to show you how I would do this.
So Steph, I have one question while we're looking at this. When you put in the group by, and I'm pretty sloppy when I'm doing my queries, so I haven't done that a ton. Where is that showing in your results? Like where does that come into play?
So that's rather than having every single line of cost be, so say there's like 1,000 per tag, every single one, it just sums it up to the total.
Gotcha. So can you show us what happens if you take that out real quick?
Yeah. It might even fail actually. Yeah, it fails. So that's because I got a comma. She's trying to get me to fail. So yeah, so you have to aggregate. It has to be aggregated. So you have to have it. That one doesn't count. That's not a failed. I was told to do that. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to use a with statement to summarize the data we had. So we're going to call this all costs, just make it really easy. And this basically makes a subquery. So now we have just a small section of the cost and use report. So with as that, then we can do select star from all costs, and it's going to be this subquery. So what we're going to do now is we need to work out these proportional spends. So first of all, we need to work out what's the total spend of all of the accounts, and we want that as an additional column, the same on every single row. Okay. And the way we're going to do this is we're going to use an over function. So as a way of replicating the same number based on different partitions. So to do this, we're going to grab my sum of spend in here, and we're going to do over partition by, and what we're going to be doing it is month and year, because that's the parameters that we have over time. So month, year, and then we're going to add that as at the end as total. These spelling mistakes already. Total spend. Okay, that should be fine.
Let's
so now,
see. Drum roll.
Let's close that off a little bit. There we go. So this is the total of all of our accounts. And then we've got this additional. So it's there on every single line. Okay, awesome. So we're going to be using this for a full calculation in the end. So now we want to work out how much we want to put this untagged number in another column so we can distribute it. Okay. So to do this, we're going to go back under. And for this, we're going to use case statements. So a case is like an if statement. So we're going to do some case. So we're looking for untagged. So case when our resource environment is null, then we're going to have unblended costs. Else.
In that initial view that you showed where you were just showing the different columns, right? In that it should have a column for every tag, right? So if you don't know exactly the name of what tag you want to grab, you could look there to check and see the different tag names, correct?
Yeah. Okay. See brackets. Now I'm checking my workings. I'm gonna ask if this works. Yeah. So there we can see that 47 is now in here. So if it's there, so now we could, because we're going to use this to distribute, right? So there is a reason we're building this up. So Alex, if I want to do tagged spend, what would I need to change in this line, do you think, to make this tagged?
It's not null.
Yeah.
Good question.
That was
wait, and then you know how picky I am about visuals. Can we decrease these decimals?
We could do that later. No, I can't bother to add. I'm not adding in a whole other section. We'll do that on another query. I'll show you how to do that later.
Okay. I'll let it go.
Okay, so let it go. Okay, so now we can see our total spend of everything, our untagged spend, and this is all the tagged spend. So we can use this to distribute it out. So what we want to figure out is what the normal spend is divided by the total spend. So that what percentage of the spend is, so what percentage of this 172 is of this tagged spend? Does that make sense? Just
you want to know what percentage is untagged.
Tagged.
Is tagged. You want to know, so we see the total spend of that, but what is the percent that makes up?
Yes. Yeah, exactly. So if we're looking at, if I already own an account, I want to know how much my account contributes to the tagged spend, because that's the proportion we're going to work off of. So for this, we're going to use some of the stuff we've done before. So it's going to be case when resource tag is not null, then hang on. This. So when it's not null, then we're going to do sum divided by our tag spend. So it's just going to copy this section from here. We're going to do the overs.
As a percentage or as a decimal?
So this will just be as a decimal. And then over that, else 0, and as percentage spend. Okay, so just to go over what I just did, and hopefully this will work. So when my resource environment is not null, so I have tagged it, we're going to take the totals, my spend divided by the total tagged spend, which is this long bit here. And then else, nothing, because we don't care about it if it's not tagged. And then we're going to have that as a percentage. Oh, because I highlighted it. Oh, is that going to work?
It's good working. Woohoo.
Yeah. Okay, so the reason we want that to be 0, that's good, because it's not relevant to the conversation. So we don't want it to do anything because this is untagged. So now we have our percentages. So we're going to leave them as the big decimals, because Alex, I'm actually going to go back to what you said earlier. The reason why we don't round that early is because all those little numbers count until the very end. So take it from me, don't round until the very end. Because
I learned something. So you're saying that it rounds in the calculation if you go ahead and round the number?
Yeah, because if you're providing it to the next bit, I think it will. So because Excel will round for you. So inevitably when this goes to our finance persona, they'll round it. So I'm like, leave it. We will be rounding later, but leave it to the end.
That's a good tip, because you're right. I mean, a finance person would just go ahead and start rounding it, which is what I wanted to do.
Awesome. Okay, so now we've got all this. We still need to figure out, now I've got my percentage, how do I work out what proportion will I be actually spending? So what's my proportion of the bill? So I'm going to make a kind of summary section to make it a little bit easier for us to understand this. So we're going to add a comma, and we're going to do calcs as bracket. Let's close this up and select, star from calcs. Right, so now we can do this. We can do our calculations in here now. So we've got our percentage spend. So we take that, and then we're going to multiply that by our untagged spend, because that's going to get our proportion of the untagged spend. And let's see what happens with that. So if I own environment 47, then my proportion of the untagged spend is 23. It's a lot, 232,000. So we're going to get this as change.
And essentially too, if you wanted to mix up what tag you were picking, you could just go in there and change that one bit in this query.
As in that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like if you wanted to change the tag that you were going for.
Yeah. So we also want to add in now the total of it, but again, we don't want to do that bottom. We don't want to do this 0 one that we've got because we don't care about the untagged resources. So we're going to use a case statement, ask one. So when, again, resource tag is not null, then we're going to do this plus our original spend. Add that, and that's going to be and as chargeback. So there we go. That should be, wait, is that right? Oh, there we go. Yeah, this plus this. No, sorry, plus this. So I'm hoping, now I'm going to go sense check this in a calculator off screen. This, because I can't show it on the
screen. Should we have a calculator at reInvent just on stage with us?
Yeah, I think so. We could just use our phone. And oh, there we go. That's else 0. Let me try that now.
As I say, I think in my quick
it's right.
In my quick numbers, it looks right.
Yeah, it is right. It's right. I just can't count. I was looking at the wrong column. So it's this column plus this column is this column. Yeah, it works. Okay.
Well, I lost you on. I mean, I didn't lose you. Oh, there you are. I couldn't find the screen. So if you see me on the side of the YouTube just looking around, guys, I apologize.
Brilliant. Okay, so now this is a very messy query, and we don't actually need this last section. We can summarize all of this by combining it, because all these things that we've said, the untagged spend, the percentage spend, they're all up here. So we don't need this extra section. And we also don't need all these columns. We just want the last one. So we're going to tidy this up a little bit. So we're going to replace each of these bits with the ones above. So I don't need this anymore because that was just an example. And so we're going to go.
Just to make everyone feel better, Steph has to do this probably to any query I've ever shown her. Tidy it up. So it's okay if you ramble in your queries.
I love it. Untagged is this. And then that's that. And I'm going to do select star from. We're going to change that to all costs. And then I'm going to get rid of this whole section. This is the scary part. I'm going to delete this whole thing and then just hope that this now works.
Did it work?
We're going to see. Yeah, there you go. Environment 47 now is going to be charged back this 405k. So you can see how much this is now simplified. And also, as another tip, this is very ugly. To make it look nice, pretty, you can hit this button and it will reformat it to be all lovely and clean cut.
Beautiful.
So there we go. Now we know how much this tag is going to be charged back. That was the original, and this is the charge back when it's untagged. So maybe this account needs to start tagging its resources properly.
Yeah.
Okay.
And they probably will when they realize what's being allocated.
So another persona we look at is engineering. And as I said before, engineers care more about their resources and their individual accounts. So in this situation, they want to find out how they can optimize those resources. We're going to look at quite a simple case, which is moving from GP2 to GP3, classic optimization opportunity, where you can save about 20% of your storage costs. Now, to do this, what we're going to do is I'm actually going to build the query from real scratch and look about how I would look for, if I was investigating a query, how I would actually go about diving into the information. So if I go back to here, let's start off with my select star from view. And I'm just going to add one where statement. So I'm just going to kind of filter this information with one specific thing, which is going to be EC2. So let me go in here, where, and we'll give myself a limit. And so what I want to do here is start to look at what kind of costs I get. So remember, we're trying to find our EBS volumes that are on GP2 that we can move to GP3. So if I look across here and I start, oh, here we go. Here's some information. This is the kind of stuff I need. So let's filter down to find resources that only have GP2. So for this, we're going to use another where statement. So we're going to go and line item usage type. Now, we can't just have equals GP2 because it's not a singular thing. So what we're going to do is we're going to split this out. So we're going to use a function called split part. And oh, we're going to take this in here. Split part this thing. And then we're going to say we're going to split by what kind of character or something. And we're going to use the single dot because between volume usage and GP2. So we're going to go dot. And we want the second thing. Let's put these in single quotes. That's a dot. And then we want it the second part. We want that to equal GP2. Let's try that. We'll scroll across. And there we go. All my GP2. Now we can actually start to kind of summarize this information. So we're also going to do an extra couple of filters. We have a look and we look across here. We see these are all usage, but there are different types of things you can have in here, like snapshots and sorry, different kind of spends on them. So we're going to make sure we only ever have usage. So we're going to equal usage. And we're start going to relevant. What do these people care about? Well, they care about their accounts. So we're going to use account ID. We're also going to use resource ID. Resource ID. Nope. One. Let's just double check the name of it. Item account. There it is. Resource ID. And let's just go for last month's data as well. And month equals 10. And year equals 2023. We're also going to need to get our unblended cost as we did before. Unblend this one. Nope. Blended. Let's copy it from our previous ones. And we're also going to get we're going to use the same thing as before. And then we're going to get our usage as well. And we're going to come back to why we did this in a minute. So it's going to be sum. We're going to get our usage. Okay. So now we can see the account, the resource. Oh, we get classic. We missed the group by. How many have we got? 1, 2, 2. Let's see this load. There we go. So we've got our account, our resource, their spend, and their usage. Simple. But now we need to optimize. So what we're going to do is we're going to figure out how we can optimize these. So we're going to do our classic with again to make our lives a little bit easier. So with GP2 data as select star from GP2. So what do we actually want to do in this situation? Well, we're actually going to get the usage and we're going to times it by 0.80, 0.8, so that we can actually get the estimated savings. So very simple. I'm going to do this as start 0.8 as GP3 cost. We're also going to get a savings, as that's going to be interesting for us, so we can work out how much we're actually going to save on this effort. So GP3 savings. Okay, so now we can see our new cost and our new saving, which is great. And we can sum by that. So moving this one will be the biggest hitter. So we recommend checking out this resource ID. Now, there's one other caveat with this. When moving between GP2 and GP3, you do want to check that you have the right resource for this situation. And there is a simple rule of thumb we use for this. It's whether the storage is less than a terabyte. This is because with GP2, when the more storage you get, the more IOPS you get. So a terabyte is equivalent to the max IOPS you get by default with the GP3. So how do we check this? Well, we use that usage we had, and all we have to say is where some unused amount is less than 1,000. There we go. So now you can share these with your different engineering teams and say, hey guys, these are the biggest EBS volumes we have. These are the ones you should optimize first, and they're definitely safe. We've checked them. Now, there is a far more complex query that you can get access to in the Kerr query library, which has a way more caveats and things like this. But that is how I would dive into my data and figure out the different columns. The next one we have is business. So for this one, we want people to see how they are doing when it comes to optimization. So we're actually going to use KPIs. So while I pull this up, Alex, do you want to explain to everyone what KPIs and unit cost is?
Yes. If you are a regular member to this YouTube channel, you know that I can't have a conversation about optimization without talking about KPIs. So for me, for my team personally, but then also my customers, it's how I motivate them to make things more efficient, right? I don't like looking at just what happened to the spend. I want to see if the actual unit cost. So for storage, say, what is the average cost of a gigabyte stored a month? If it gets better or worse, right? So it could get better or worse from turning things on and off, yes. But essentially, in the long term, if there's a trend, it's going to be because you made that environment more efficient. Unit costs also would play into, I kind of alluded to this in a couple personas ago, but it can also be something that you correlate back to revenue, right? So if you're thinking in this business mindset, right, you want to see which products are the most efficient, but also the most profitable. So you could go and correlate that to other data sets if you have a consistent unit cost across the board.
Yeah. So what I've done here is, as most people know, when you're writing a query or any kind of code, it's rare people start from actual scratch. So we've done that today to give you an insight into it. But what we would normally do is go to our favorite website, the Kerr query library, which is this place. So this allows you to see loads of different pre-made queries that have been tested and created by different authors and across all different services. So if you are starting out, we recommend checking this. So all I've done is stolen an EC2 query. And this is copied straight from it. So I've changed to my table. I've changed to my date series. Now, Alex, do we think this is going to run straight away?
No.
Oh, frustrating news. So this error doesn't count. This is the one I spoke about being predicted. We knew about. So when Alex was talking about the schema, we're saying that there are different columns based on different resources that are created. For example, in this query, it's looking if I'm using something called ODCRs. And so I'm not actually using this capacity, this pre-planned capacity. So I can get rid of this and that will fix it. So the main thing there is if you have queries that have columns of services you don't use, you need to get rid of them. But to continue on, this query is really useful because it's pre-filtered out stuff I need, but it has got some extra information I don't care about. So we're going to get rid of that. So today we only care about total compute unit cost. So I'm going to get rid of this query about my instance types. I also don't care about purchase option. I don't care about bills, billing accounts. I do care about month and year because we've been using that through the whole day or session. So we're going to add those back in. And I'm going to edit my section down here on my group buys. So we don't need these anymore, but we do need our year and month. And I'm going to change this to my amortized cost. So what I mentioned earlier about amortized cost. So all I've done in here, what the query has, is it kind of levels out the spend based on if I have any savings plans or if I have any reserved instances. So savings plans cover coverage usage, RIs are discounted usage, and usage is just kind of commitment-based usage. So this will normalize it out. So it's actually what we spent money on rather than the zero that would happen because it was covered by a savings plan. So if I run this now, it will give me a nice little layout of our spend based on account ID.
You know, my first year at AWS, I avoided saying amortized because I felt like I was saying it wrong every time. Fun fact that you get from the YouTube channel that people at
What did
reInvent
you
will
think?
get.
I thought you were going to say because you didn't know how to make amortized, because that's what I was going to say because I didn't know what it was.
I mean, yeah. Well, I think I was just like, I don't think I like pronounce it right, but then I also was very confused from a finance standpoint since I don't have a finance background. Which is the great thing about FinOps, guys, is that you don't have to have one specific background. You can kind of combine it all into one. But I was worried that I didn't understand the definition and that I was saying it wrong, and just avoided
There's
it.
all those things. Yeah, just I felt that avoid it. Avoidance, the best policy.
A great example.
What we're going to do is we're going to make a unit cost. So as Alex said, it's just cost divided by usage. So same as earlier, we're going to copy the case statements that were already in there, and we're going to have this as unit cost, which is here. And so we should get an extra little column. Now, I'm going to jump back to something Alex said a lot earlier, which was rounding. Now, this is a good situation where you can round, because when it comes to unit cost, we care less about all these individual numbers. We just want to get it summarized. So to do that, all you need to do is add a round, very simple, at the start, and say how many decimal places you want it to be, and that will round out our summary.
And you would have to do that for each sum, correct?
Yeah, if I wanted it for the other ones as well, we could do that. So yeah, there we go. So 0.51. This account has the highest spend, so it has a high unit cost, but we don't actually know it's got the highest unit cost. It's a little bit higher than some other accounts.
So this is where I jump in, that it doesn't always matter who has the highest or lowest. What matters is how it's changing month to month, because there might be an account, the way that they're architected, or maybe the way that they have their EC2, maybe they have to have a lot larger instances, that is going to have a higher unit cost. But what you want to track is which account is making the best improvement. So like look at the percent improved month over month, if you're looking from, to motivate people, right? Because if you look at this, so you have a 0.51, and then Steph, scroll to the lowest. Okay, so then you have a 0.02. So
no.
Yeah,
$45. Yeah.
If you go tell account KAFQ, I like the names, that they need to get to 0.02, they're not. That is a complete demotivator, right? But if you say, hey, account CFG had the greatest improvement in Q3, then that's a good way to motivate that, and so forth. And then in the sense of like a benchmark, I usually say, if you're migrating something or it's a similar workload, go look at the accounts that are similar. Don't just say what's our lowest across the board.
Okay, let's run through this last bit now quickly. So what we're going to do is, as Alex said, we want to track over time. So we're going to quickly change this to look across 2 different months and see if there will be any changes. So to do that, I'm going to add an in statement, and we're going to look across September and October and go down. And so we're going to add a case statement in to look at these 2 different ones. So we're going to have case. Do you know what? We're going to make our lives a little bit easier because we've been through a lot of these before. I'm going to copy them. So case when month is 09 as sept unit, underscore unit cost. And then we'll do the same thing as 10. However, I already know that this is not going to work if I leave it as this, because you need to make sure that you have the same lines. If I do this now, it's going to error, and it's because I'm going to have multiple different versions of it and multiple different lines. So I know there's only one example of this unit cost on each line. So I'm going to use a max to pull that data in. So we're going to do max in there and max in here. And then I'm going to add a group by. my account ID, and hopefully we'll be able to see over the last 2 months how they've been
Why
running.
would you do a max over an average?
Just because it's a good thing you can interchange them, but it's the first one that I used.
And guys, if there's queries or questions in here that you have, again, drop it in the YouTube comments, because if this is something that's helpful, this is something we could continue to do.
There we go. So we can actually see KAFQ is actually done some optimization. They've gone down from 51.
Winner, winner.
Okay. To summarize, call to action. So number 1, check your query is configured. Number 2, check from the query library for your different opportunities and different queries you can use, and have a go. Check out the link tray for all the fun resources and different things that you can use to get started. And let us know how you get on. Drop us a comment, and don't forget to like and subscribe generally for the YouTube channel for more videos like this.
Hey, and when you check that your cur is configured, make sure you have resource ID granularity turned on. Please, please, please do it now.
Do it.